The National School Chaplaincy Program has been controversial from its first day, and with a High Court challenge and a federal investigation underway, that won't change anytime soon. In 2006, the then Prime Minister John Howard introduced a scheme to put chaplains in schools. There are now nearly 3,000 around Australia, and the Labor government's expanding the scheme with 1,000 more. There have always been questions about why state schools should have chaplains instead of secular advisors. Now there are also a number of cases raising concerns about chaplains overstepping the line into counselling that they're not qualified to do. Tracy Bowden reports.
But I just felt really angry. I didn't know how else to deal with it, and I just wanted it to stop.
It was the complex case of Aidan Cross that set off concerns about the role played by school chaplains, a case that's gone all the way to the Commonwealth Ombudsman. It began when the 9-year-old was bullied at his school outside Darwin, sparking an eruption in the classroom.
He just stood up, threw his table over and said, "I'm going to bring a knife to school, I'm going to stab you and you'll be dead."
"Hey Aidan, do you want a drink?"
Cathy Cross knew her son desperately needed professional help, so she turned to the school. But it was the help that was offered that created the controversy.
They just said you'd be seeing a counsellor at school for your anger management. He was talking to me about my anger and ways I could cope with it.
It was only after 5 months that Cathy Cross learnt her troubled son was not seeing a trained counsellor, but a school chaplain with no relevant qualifications. The case was referred to the Ombudsman in the Northern Territory, who concluded that it was a serious breach of federal government guidelines which state that school chaplains can't provide services they're not qualified for example, counselling services or psychological assessment.
They will find themselves engaging with students with considerable levels of disturbance, social, emotional relationships and even mental health issues.
It's the mid-afternoon rush in a cafe north of Brisbane, and the special of the day is the Chappuccino. School chaplains, or chappies as they're known, are doubling as waiters today. It's a promotional event to raise funds for their work.
Students have an issue going on, they come and see us and we have a little chat and we lend an ear to the kids.
They're there for the emotional and spiritual support of students. So they're helping kids deal with issues that range from family breakdown, peer group issues, bullying, friendship issues.
Don't say a word. You are being cautioned by him.
As a former professional rugby league referee, Tim Mander's accustomed to a stoush.
I'm involved with SU because I want to be involved with something significant. We want to give
These days he's the chief executive of Scripture Union Queensland, the nation's largest provider of school chaplains. And still he's facing plenty of heat from opponents.
Even in their quieter moments, they would recognise that chaplains do great work, but they don't believe, on ideological stance, that federal funding should go towards a program like this.
We find this an absolute misuse of funds to put resources into people who are less equipped to handle the sorts of situations in schools.
This is about the issue of resources.
David Stokes is from the Professional Association for the nation's 20,000 psychologists. He warns that school chaplains are providing mental health counselling and that the risks to students are immense.
They have stepped over that professional boundary very regularly, and that concerns us.
We're thrown into the deep end, asked to do this, and then not given very many tools or methods to deal with it.
Former chaplain Beau Walker embraced school life, but with no formal qualifications, there were aspects to his job that he struggled with.
I would be asked from the school to maybe go and speak to a child who had a relative pass away. I found that very difficult situation because myself, I didn't know how I could deal with that. I definitely believe that to ask me to sit with a child one-on-one that had a member pass away definitely comes into the realm of counselling the child.
But was Beau Walker aware that he was breaching the guidelines on counselling?
So yeah, the guidelines say no counselling, but what else can you do in that situation?
Well, one, I don't know about that incident, and all I can say is that nobody's instructed, no chaplain is instructed to counsel students. Chaplains are not counsellors, they're not formal counsellors. They work in partnership with formal counsellors, referring kids on to counsellors and psychologists and guidance officers when they come across issues that are obviously more complex than what they can handle.
If something goes wrong, all the effort seems to go into hiding the problem and remind her about the code of conduct.
Bill and Helen Holder are still struggling to come to terms with their experience with the chaplain who worked at their daughter's school just outside Brisbane. They were all close family friends. The Holders and the chaplain's family would often spend time together. But during a camping trip, the friendship came unstuck.
Shocked and disgusted that what was being said between them both.
The Holders learnt their 12-year-old son and their friend, the school chaplain, had been chatting online. Computer logs revealed the details of the communications. Amongst the talk about video games and family outings, there were exchanges that alarmed Bill and Helen Holder.
Wondered if you were hiding any hickeys.
What?
Bet you don't know what a hickey is, hey? Must be getting old.
I don't know what a hickey is at all. Do I want to know what they are?
Love bite, you know, big red sucky mark on your neck.
She'd make comments like spank you later and things like that, and she kept saying, you know, trust me, I'm the chaplain.
And there was this exchange.
Behave. No dancing naked on the webcam.
I don't have a webcam. I don't like them.
In part of the chat, she had implied that she had no clothes on while chatting to him. Another one was spank you later. Just talking about inappropriate things like pash-vash and hickeys. It's just, yeah.
The Holders complained to the school and to the chaplain's employer, Scripture Union Queensland.
Look, it was a very complex issue. It wasn't with a student in the school. It was with a family friend, the son of a family friend, and basically it became a dispute between two families. We thoroughly investigated the incident and came to the conclusion that yes, the behaviour was inappropriate and that appropriate counselling had to take place.
Ultimately, the federal government withdrew funding, and as a result, the chaplain lost her job. She remains at the school as a volunteer.
She never ever lost her working with children clearance from the state government because it was deemed that nothing she did was predatory or inappropriate in that sense.
But the experience has left this family questioning the management of chaplains in schools.
They're not qualified and they're not trained, and they may make mistakes that will damage these kids in long term.
These are testing times for school chaplains, with the program under ever-increasing scrutiny.
Do you know what their views on homosexuality are?
At a recent estimates hearing, ALP Senator Gavin Marshall raised concerns about the potential for homophobia amongst school chaplains employed by Scripture Union.
I think their view might be able to be summarised as homosexuals will burn in hell. If someone was struggling, if a child was struggling with their own sexuality and spoke to one of these people and that was a response, would that be acceptable?
No, it wouldn't. That would be totally contrary to the guidelines and to the code of conduct which has been signed by them.
730 has learnt that a chaplain at a Queensland school gave this magazine to his students. It's a so-called Bible zine for teenage boys, offering a passport for your journey with Jesus. There's this advice on the myth of safe sex. Condoms not only can't promise safe sex, but they practically condone promiscuity. And on homosexuality, God doesn't call it an alternative lifestyle, he calls it a sin. Scripture Union Queensland says it's broadly aware of the publication, but its chaplains are instructed not to impose their personal beliefs on students.
I'm sort of hoping that sense will prevail. We really need chaplaincies in school.
With funding assured for the next 3 years, the federal government is putting its faith in the School Chaplaincy Program. But that's against a rising chorus claiming chaplains are overstepping their role in the public education system.
Although the chaplaincy agencies have been talking reasonable practice and policy, there's clear evidence that that's not being followed by practitioners themselves in schools.
Tracy Bowden there, and that report was co-produced by Hagar Cohen and Leslie Robinson.